Ooh, it's a lot of water here. You know, we sure have had a couple wet and rainy few weeks, haven't we? And if you're not a big fan of it, I've got some bad news for you, because nearly all the climate models today predicted with climate change, we're going to be continuing to see increasingly warmer and wetter falls, winters, and springs here in coastal Cascadia. So you might want to invest in a solid rain jacket. You know, we've seen higher than average levels of flooding with rivers like this one all across the bioregion here, as well as landslides that have taken out multiple roads, highways, and trains in just a few days. And while it's really easy to blame all of this on climate change, our forests have a really big role to play here as well. See, healthy, functioning forest ecosystems have a rich, multi-layered canopy and diverse understory and woody debris all along the forest floor that absorbs and soaks up water to slow and regulate its flow into the soils and downstream, while the diversity and depth of these roots help stabilize riverbanks and hillsides to keep them from collapsing with all that water weight, you know? A vast amount of our second growth forests all across Cascadia and North America at large, though, lack that diversity of tree and plant species in the canopy and the understory, as well as the woody debris that all collectively regulates and slows water flow, and as a result, the rainwater that falls runs off really quickly, carrying with it soils and sediments that silt up rivers and dams, easily overrunning the banks and causing flooding downstream. The shallow roots of these younger trees that often line the edges of clear cuts, developments, or roadways, whose roots are now saturated with water, are also subject to increased windfall from high winds that come with those same low pressure systems that bring the rains, and which contributes to a snowball effect that only creates further damage to these ecosystems. The lack of understory and the dead and decaying roots of the old forest that was cut down allows for water to quickly seep in down to the soils, down to the bedrock, where it loosens the friction between those soft little soil particles and the rocks, essentially liquefying it. That, combined with the lack of living roots to bind it all together, creates more erosion that often manifests in these rainstorms as massive mudslides that takes out highways and cuts off communities, destroys houses, or even small towns like what happened in Oso, Washington back in 2014, where 41 people were killed when rains triggered a landslide on land that had been clear-cut logged just a few years earlier. Ironically, it's these same damaged ecosystems leading to all this destructive water flow that is also one of the largest contributors to the record-breaking wildfires we see each summer. So yes, climate change is creating warmer and wetter weather patterns and hotter, drier summers, but the landscape of poorly managed clear cuts and second growth forests all across Cascadia is one of the largest contributors to the devastation we're seeing today, from floods to fires, as these ecosystems lack the resilience to mitigate the effects of climate change. This is the world we've created for ourselves, and it's up to us to try to do something about it. Unless we stop cutting down the few remaining old growth forests we have left to preserve their ecological function, and instead turn our efforts towards sustainably managing, restoring, and rehabilitating these second growth forests for improved ecological function, well, then we're in for one heck of a ride, so hang on to your butts.